Good morning, boys and girls. We are on page 73. Make sure you are on lesson 15 homework for today. And the first question asks you to draw place value disk on the place value chart to solve, and then show each step in standard algorithm. So I want you guys to focus more on how to do this the algorithm way, because now I think you understand how to do it visually, and you see it visually, you're understanding why the numbers are moving. So now we're going to focus a little bit more on the standard algorithm. So the first question we have here is how many can 4 go into 0? That's going to be 0 times, because 4 cannot go into 0. 4 times 0 is equal to 0, and then I'm going to subtract. 0 minus 0 is equal to 0. Then I'm going to bring down my 7. How many times can 4 go into 7? 4 can go into 7 one time, because 4 times 1 is equal to 4. Now I'm going to subtract. What is 7 minus 4? 7 minus 4 is equal to 3. And now you notice that you have a remainder. We don't stop here. In 5th grade, when we learn about decimals, you are going to continue to add a 0 and bring it down. So that's what we're doing here. We're adding a 0 and bringing it down, because you can get a better estimation or exact number for decimals. So now we're going to figure out how many times can 4 go into 30. 4 times 7 is equal to 28. Now I'm going to subtract. I can't subtract 0 minus 8, so I'm borrowing. My 3 changes to a 2. 10 minus 8 is equal to 2. I'm adding another 0, because still I'm not getting 0 as a remainder. So I'm bringing down my 0. How many times can 4 go into 20? 4 can go into 25 times. 20 minus 20 is equal to 0. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remember to bring up my decimal. So my final answer is 175 thousandths. Okay? Now you can write that right here in your little answer spot. And now we're going to move on to the next problem. For next problem, we have 8 1/10 divided by 5. And notice the first number is going to be your dividend, which is the number that goes inside. And the second number is the number that goes outside. It is called your divisor. So I need to figure out how many times can 5 go into 8. 5 can go into 8 one time. So 1 times 5 is equal to 5. 8 minus 5 is equal to 3, and bring down my 1. 5 can go into 31 6 times. 31 minus 30, or 1 minus 0, is equal to 1. 3 minus 3 is equal to 0. Now I'm going to add a 0 and bring down a 0. How many times can 5 go into 10? 5 can go into 10 2 times. So now I'm going to subtract. 10 minus 10 is equal to 0. And I'm going to bring up my decimal. So my final answer is 1 62 hundredths. Okay? Now we're going to turn the page. And for these, they also want you to practice using the standard algorithm. So that's what I'm going to do. The first number is always going to be your number that goes inside. Okay, so I'm going to highlight that so that you're clear that the first number you see is going to be the number that goes inside, and that is called your dividend. It goes inside, dividend. And your divisor is a number that is going to go outside. It is called your divisor. Okay, now I'm figuring out how many times can 2 go into 0. 2 cannot go into 0. It can only go into 0 times. 2 times 0 is equal to 0. I'm going to subtract. 0 minus 0 is equal to 0. I'm going to bring down my 7. 2 can go into 7 3 times. 2 times 3 is equal to 6. I'm going to subtract. 7 minus 6 is equal to 1. Now look, I have a remainder, but I'm not quite done yet, because my remainder is not a 0. So I'm going to add a 0 and bring that down. 2 can go into 10 5 times. 10 minus 10 is equal to 0. So that's when you can stop. Now, I'm going to make sure I bring up my decimal. So my final answer is 0 35 hundredths. Now I'm going to go on to the next problem, problem B. Notice that 3 and 9/10 goes inside and the 6 goes outside as my divisor. How many times can 6 go into 3? 6 cannot go into 3, so I'm going to put 0. 6 times 0 is equal to 0. 3 minus 0 is equal to 3. I'm going to bring down my 9. 6 times 6 is equal to 36. 9 minus 6 is equal to 3. I'm going to add a 0 because my remainder is a 3. How many times can 6 go into 30? 5 times. 30 minus 30 is equal to 0. Now I need to make sure I bring up my decimal. My final answer is 65 hundredths. Now I'm going to solve for problem C. I have 9 divided by 4. Remember I said the first number always goes inside as the dividend, and the second number is going to be the number that goes outside as your divisor. So how many times can 4 go into 9? 4 can go into 9 2 times. 4 times 2 is equal to 8. 9 minus 8 is equal to 1. I'm going to add a 0 because my remainder is not quite right. Now, when you have a whole number and you're adding a 0, it doesn't suddenly become 90, right? It's supposed to be less. So what happens is you're going to put a decimal and then a 0 because your number is actually extending past the decimal at that point. So bring down your 0. 4 can go into 10 2 times. Oh, and 4 times 2 is equal to 8. So I'm subtracting. 10 minus 8 is equal to 2. I'm going to add another 0 and bring down that 0. How many times can 4 go into 20? 5 times. 20 minus 20 is equal to 0. Don't forget to bring your decimal up. Your final answer is 2 and 25 hundredths. Now I'm going to move on to problem D. Notice that 0 and 92 hundredths goes inside as my dividend, and my divisor is a 2. 2 can go into 0 0 times, so I'm subtracting 0 minus 0. 2 can go into 9 4 times. 2 times 4 is equal to 8. 9 minus 8 is equal to 1. Bring down your 2. 2 can go into 12 6 times. 12 minus 12 is equal to 0. I can bring up my decimal. My final answer is 46 hundredths. Now my next problem. How many times can 4 go into 9? 4 times 2 is equal to 8. 9 minus 8 is equal to 1. Bring down my 4. 4 can go into 14 3 times. 4 times 3 is equal to 12. Subtract. 4 minus 2 is equal to 2. You're going to add a 0 because your remainder is not 0, it's 2. 4 can go into 25 times. 20 minus 20 is equal to 0. Do not forget to bring your decimal up. Now, the next one I have 91 divided by 8. 91 is my dividend and 8 is my divisor. 8 can go into 9 1 time. 9 minus 8 is equal to 1. Bring down my 1. 8 can go into 11 1 time. Subtract. 11 minus 8 is equal to 3. And I'm going to add a decimal and a 0 because that is a whole number and anything after the whole number is going to become a decimal. So I'm going to bring down my 0. 8 can go into 30. How many times? 3 times because 8 times 3 is equal to 24. Okay, now I'm going to subtract. I can't subtract 0 minus 4, so I'm going to borrow from my neighbor. 10 minus 4 is equal to 6. 2 minus 2 is equal to 0. I still have a remainder, so I'm going to keep going. I'm going to add a 0 and bring down my 0. 8 can go into 60 7 times. 8 times 7 is equal to 56. I can't subtract 0 minus 6, so I'm going to borrow. 10 minus 6 is equal to 4. 6 changes to a 5. 5 minus 5 is 0. So now I'm going to add another 0 and bring down my 0. Wow. How many times do you think 8 can go into 40? 8 can go into 40 5 times because 8 times 5 is equal to 40. 40 minus 40 is equal to 0. Don't forget to bring your decimal up, and your final answer is 11 and